The girl had learned early how to stay quiet. Not because anyone told her to, but because life around her worked better that way. Loud voices meant trouble. Silence meant safety. She followed her mother through long hallways before she even understood what those halls were for. Tall walls, shiny floors, heavy doors. Places that smelled of polish, dust, and old wood. Her mother worked as a cleaner in a large music building in the city, a place where important people came and went without noticing those who cleaned behind them. Every day after school, the girl waited near the back in trance with her small bag hanging from one shoulder. Her mother would wave her in, tired but smiling, and they would begin the routine together. The mother cleaned, wiped, scrubbed, and organized. The girl sat on a bench doing homework or watching people pass by. Musicians walked quickly, carrying cases, talking about schedules, notes, and rehearsals. None of them looked at the girl. She was just part of the background, like the walls or the lights. Money was always tight. The girl knew this without needing to hear it said out loud. She saw it in the careful way her mother counted coins, in the slow steps they took past shop windows, and in the meals that were simple but shared with care. There were no music lessons, no fancy clothes, no extra treats. But there was love and there was patience. Her mother never complained, even when her hands hurt or her back felt stiff at the end of the day. At home, their apartment was small and quiet. The walls were thin, and the windows let in the noise of the street. One corner of the room held something special, an old keyboard someone had thrown away. A few keys did not work, and the sound was uneven, but to the girl, it felt like a treasure. She had found it near a trash area one evening and begged her mother to let her keep it. Her mother cleaned it carefully and placed it near the window. The girl did not know how to read music. No one had ever taught her. Instead, she listened. She listened at work, hiding behind doors or sitting quietly in the hallway. She listened to rehearsals, warm-ups, and mistakes. She memorized sounds the way other children memorize stories. At night, she pressed the broken keys and tried to repeat what she had heard earlier that day. Sometimes it sounded wrong. Sometimes it sounded close. She kept trying. Her fingers were small, but they moved with care. She did not rush. She did not show off. Music was not something she used to impress anyone. It was something that made her feel less alone. When she played, the noise of the street faded. The worries about money faded. Even the tired look on her mother's face seemed to soften. Her mother noticed, of course. Mothers always do. She saw how the girl leaned closer to the keyboard, how her eyes closed when she played, how her shoulders relaxed. She never told her to stop. Even when neighbors complained about noise, the mother apologized kindly and waited until late hours when most people were asleep. Then she let the girl play softly, barely touching the keys. At the music building, the girl learned another skill, waiting. Waiting while her mother cleaned one room after another. Waiting while rehearsals ran late. Waiting while people argued about schedules and sounds. She learned how to sit still without being bored, how to observe without being seen. She noticed everything. The way musicians tapped their fingers when nervous. The way some smiled at their instruments like old friends. The way others looked stressed, carrying success like a heavy bag. Sometimes, when her mother cleaned rehearsal rooms, the girl was allowed to sit quietly in a corner. She would stare at the instruments left behind for a moment. A violin resting on a chair. A trumpet placed carefully in its case. A piano standing proudly against the wall. She never touched anything. She knew better. These things did not belong to her. The grand hall was her favorite place, even though she rarely entered it. It was large, open, and filled with rows of empty seats most of the time. The stage lights hung high above, silent and patient. At the center stood a grand piano, black and polished, like something from another world. The girl only saw it from far away, usually when doors were open for cleaning. She imagined how it might sound, deeper and fuller than her broken keyboard at home. Her mother warned her often, "Stay where I can see you. Do not touch anything. Do not make noise." The girl always nodded. She understood rules. Rules kept them safe. Yet music had a strange way of pulling at her heart. Even while sitting quietly, Her fingers moved in the air, practicing notes only she could hear. She did not dream of fame or applause. She did not imagine crowds cheering. Her dreams were simple. She wanted to play freely, without worrying about broken keys or low volume. One afternoon, the building felt different. The air was busy, filled with voices and fast footsteps. A group of well-known musicians had been rehearsing all day for an upcoming event. The girl did not know who they were, only that people treated them with extra care. Her mother worked harder that day, moving quickly, wanting everything to be perfect. As evening approached, the building slowly emptied. Lights turned off one by one. Doors closed. The sounds of practice faded into silence. The girl finished her homework and placed her notebook back in her bag. She felt tired, but also restless. The quiet felt heavy, like something waiting to happen. Her mother sent her to wait near the side hallway, a place she knew well. "I will be done soon," her mother said softly. The girl nodded and sat down. She could hear her own breathing. The building felt larger when empty, almost alive. From where she sat, she could see the door to the main hall slightly open. A soft light spilled out onto the floor. The piano was inside. She knew this without seeing it. Her heart began to beat faster. She told herself to stay where she was. She told herself to wait. But curiosity and love for music quietly pushed against her rules. She stood up slowly, listening for footsteps. None came. The hallway was still. She took one step closer to the open door, then another. She was not planning to touch anything. She only wanted to look. Standing at the doorway, she saw the piano clearly for the first time. It looked bigger up close, more powerful, yet calm. The bench sat in front of it, empty, inviting. The girl felt something she had never felt before, a mix of fear and excitement. Her fingers twitched. She glanced behind her, making sure her mother was not nearby. The hall was silent. She stepped inside, her shoes barely making a sound. The stage lights were dim, but enough to see the keys shining softly. She reminded herself that she would only sit for a moment, only imagine how it might feel. She sat down slowly, her feet barely touching the floor. Her hands hovered over the keys, not touching yet. Her heart raced. This was not part of her plan. But life had never followed plans anyway. She took a deep breath. Her fingers lowered gently, pressing the first key. The sound was clear and full, unlike anything she had ever heard before. It filled the hall and wrapped around her like warmth. Her eyes widened, and before she could stop herself, her fingers moved again. She did not know that this small moment, born from quiet days and broken keyboards, was about to change everything. The girl's fingers trembled at first, but soon she lost herself in the music. She had no idea what she was playing, only that each note felt right. She pressed the keys softly at first, then with more confidence. The sound filled the hall, echoing off the tall walls and empty seats. It was her own private world, where no one could see her mistakes, no one could judge her, and no one could stop her. The music was gentle, then grew stronger, a melody she had heard somewhere in her mind but never in her ears. Time seemed to pause. The girl's heart raced, yet she felt calm. Every key she pressed carried a memory, a hope, a longing she could not put into words. She thought of her mother, working tirelessly every day, and her own small life that had been quiet, hidden behind doors and hallways. She thought of the broken keyboard at home and how it had been her closest friend. Now, sitting at this grand piano, she could see and feel the difference. The sound was rich, smooth, and alive. Unbeknownst to her, she was not entirely alone. Behind one of the side doors, a few well-known musicians had lingered after rehearsal, tired but unwilling to leave. One had gone to fetch a forgotten sheet of music, another had stopped to organize instruments, and one more had lingered to listen to a colleague. None of them had expected anything unusual. They were focused on their own work, unaware that something extraordinary was about to happen. The first note caught their attention. It was soft, almost shy, but it carried a depth that made them pause. One of the musicians frowned, thinking they must have misheard. Then the second note came, smoother and more certain. They looked at each other, unsure if it was real. Quietly, they moved toward the hall, drawn by a sound they could not explain. The girl did not notice. She was completely absorbed in the music. Her fingers moved over the keys as if they had a mind of their own. She experimented with different sounds, pressing some keys harder, letting others ring gently. The melody rose and fell, twisting and turning, gentle and fierce at the same time. Every emotion she had ever felt seemed to pour through her fingertips, and the grand piano carried it farther than she could imagine. The musicians entered silently, careful not to startle her. They stopped at the doorway and watched in awe. One of them whispered, barely audible, "Who is playing?" They could not believe what they were hearing. It was not a polished student, not a trained child from a prestigious school. It was raw, pure talent. Every note was filled with feeling, with understanding beyond her years. She did not look up. She did not even notice the audience. For the first time in her life, she felt free. The hall seemed to shrink around her, the lights focusing only on her hands and the keys. She imagined stories, adventures, and dreams as she played. She did not think about being seen, being judged, or being corrected. This was hers, and it had always belonged to her. One musician stepped closer, careful to stay behind the doorframe. They wanted to hear more clearly to see if it was real. The other two joined, forming a silent circle, eyes wide, mouths slightly open. They recognized talent when they heard it, but what they were hearing defied expectation. It was not just skill, it was emotion, understanding, and a voice of its own. Each note was an expression of the girl's life, her struggles, and her dreams. Her fingers moved faster now, gliding over the keys with ease. She had never had formal lessons, yet she understood rhythm, harmony, and melody instinctively. She played without hesitation, correcting herself automatically, as if the piano were an extension of her own body. She felt no fear, only joy and release. The music was speaking for her, telling stories she could not put into words. As the notes filled the hall, one musician whispered to the others, "Is she real?" They shared looks of disbelief. They had never seen a child play like this, especially one so young and untrained. The depth of understanding, the courage to express herself fully, and the connection to the instrument were extraordinary. They felt honored to witness something so rare, something that could not be taught. The girl's hands moved in a dance of passion and precision, sometimes soft, almost hesitant, sometimes strong, demanding attention. She experimented with sounds, trying chords she had never heard fully played before. Occasionally, a mistake happened, but she did not stop. She adapted, turning errors into new ideas. The music became alive, unpredictable, and breathtaking. Time passed, though it felt like only minutes to her. She was unaware of the sun setting outside, of the shadows stretching across the hall, or of the musicians standing silently mesmerized. The hall had become a place of wonder, where a simple girl with no name known to the world could create something extraordinary. Each note carried hope, longing, sadness, and joy, all mixed together. The musicians finally could not remain quiet. One of them stepped forward, breaking the spell with a soft cough. The girl startled slightly, her fingers hovering over the keys. She looked up, eyes wide, and for the first time, realized she was not alone. There were 3 adults standing near the door, famous, respected, and staring at her with amazement. She froze, unsure what to do, unsure if she had done something wrong. For a moment, silence filled the hall. The only sound was the faint ringing of the last notes she had played. Her breathing was loud in her own ears, and her heart pounded. She had never expected an audience like this, especially not at this moment. She felt a mix of fear and embarrassment. What would they think? Would they scold her? Would they laugh? Instead, the musicians smiled softly. They did not laugh. They did not scold. They simply nodded, and one of them said gently, "That was beautiful." The words made the girl relax slightly. She had never heard such praise from people she did not know, people so important and talented. She blushed, unsure how to respond. Another musician stepped closer, examining her hands. "You play with feeling," they said. "You understand the music in a way most adults cannot." The girl's eyes widened. She did not understand. She only knew that she loved to play. She loved the sound. She loved the feeling of being able to express herself without words. And now someone noticed. Someone really noticed. Her mother appeared at the doorway, drawn by the sound and the voices. She stopped, surprised to see her daughter at the piano and 3 famous musicians watching. She opened her mouth, ready to apologize, but then she saw the expressions on their faces. They were not angry. They were amazed. Her heart swelled with pride and relief. She stepped forward cautiously, putting a protective hand near her daughter, but the musicians waved her to stay back. The girl looked at her mother, unsure what to do. The musicians smiled encouragingly, as if to say, "It's okay. You are not in trouble." The girl took a deep breath and pressed one more key. The sound filled the hall again, softer this time, more cautious, but it carried a quiet confidence. The musicians leaned in, listening, appreciating every note, every pause, every movement. For the girl, this moment changed everything. It was more than playing music. It was being seen. For the first time, someone recognized her talent, her dedication, her heart. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, but above all, hope. Maybe, just maybe, music could take her somewhere she had never dreamed of. Maybe she could belong in this world, not as the quiet girl behind the scenes, but as someone whose voice mattered. The hall remained quiet after she stopped playing. The musicians exchanged looks, understanding without words. They knew talent when they saw it, and this was rare, unpolished yet perfect in its honesty. They did not rush her. They let the silence linger, letting the moment sink in, letting the girl realize what she had accomplished without anyone's help. The girl finally stood up from the piano, hands trembling slightly. Her mother reached for her, holding her gently. The musicians stepped back, giving space, but their eyes were still fixed on the girl. They whispered among themselves, amazed by what they had just witnessed. The girl did not know it, but she had made an impression that would last a lifetime. She left the hall that night with a strange mixture of fear, pride, and excitement. She did not understand what had happened fully, but she knew one thing. Her life had shifted, even if just a little. Music had always been a companion, but now it had a witness, a chance, a future. She held onto that feeling tightly as she walked down the quiet hallway, the sound of the grand piano echoing in her mind, and a small, secret smile crossed her face. The girl could not stop thinking about that evening. Every moment replayed in her mind, the feeling of the keys under her fingers, the echo of the grand hall, the wide eyes of the musicians. She tried to imagine herself back at home, sitting at her small, broken keyboard, but nothing sounded the same. That piano, the hall, the sound, and the presence of those musicians had changed the way music felt to her. It was bigger, deeper, more alive. The next day, she went about her routine, but everything seemed different. The hall was busy again with rehearsals and noise, but she carried a secret inside her. She had been seen. She had been heard. That knowledge filled her with a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. She tried to focus on her homework at the small desk in her apartment, but her thoughts drifted to the piano and the musicians' faces. Could she ever play like that again? Would they even remember her? Her mother noticed her distracted state and asked gently if she was feeling unwell. The girl shook her head and forced a small smile. She could not tell her mother what she had done and what had happened. Some things felt too big to speak about, and she wanted to keep them close for now. Instead, she carried on with chores, homework, and helping her mother, always humming little melodies under her breath. Music was now part of her in a new way. It was not only a private escape anymore, it was a link to something bigger. At the hall that day, the girl returned to her usual spot behind the cleaning carts. She moved quietly, careful not to draw attention. The musicians she had seen the night before were practicing loudly, their instruments echoing off the walls. She watched from a distance, studying their movements, how their fingers danced across strings and keys, how they adjusted their breathing and posture. Every action taught her something she had never noticed before. She copied some movements in her mind, practicing silently while helping her mother tidy the floors and tables. By mid-afternoon, most of the performers had left, and the hall became quiet again. She could feel the call of the piano, and she wanted to see it up close. This time, she did not just walk toward it. She moved cautiously, imagining how she would sit, how she would touch the keys, how she would make the music speak for her. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment, and then, slowly, she began to play. The melody was soft, gentle, full of memory and hope. She had not planned it. She only let her heart guide her. This time, she heard someone approaching before she realized it. It was a janitor from another floor, carrying cleaning supplies. She froze and lowered her hands. The janitor paused, noticing the sound, and smiled. "That's beautiful," he said quietly, not wanting to startle her. She blushed and whispered, "Thank you." His words encouraged her, and she played a little more softly. The notes filled the empty hall, carrying warmth and emotion. Even the janitor stopped to listen for a moment, surprised by the depth of feeling from someone so young. Over the next few days, the girl's connection to the piano grew stronger. She would find moments when the hall was empty, or nearly empty, to play. Sometimes her mother was nearby, sometimes she waited quietly in the hallway. Every time she played, she discovered new notes, new ways to combine sound, new feelings to express. She learned to listen deeply, not just to the instrument, but to herself. Each session was a lesson in patience, expression, and courage. The musicians, meanwhile, had not forgotten the girl. The memory of her playing stayed with them, haunting them in the best way. They shared stories among themselves, talking about the child who had appeared out of nowhere and played with such emotion and understanding. They could not explain it. They had seen many prodigies in music schools, many talented children, but there was something unique about her. It was not just her skill, it was her heart, her honesty, her way of making music breathe. One day, one of the musicians returned to the hall earlier than usual. They wanted to see if the girl would play again. They arrived quietly, moving behind a column, listening. The moment they heard the first note, they froze. It was unmistakable, the same delicate, powerful expression they had heard before. They watched silently as she played, her fingers moving across the keys like they had always known the piano, filling the hall with stories she could not yet tell in words. The girl felt the presence but did not panic. Something in the music made her brave. She continued to play, weaving the melodies that came to her naturally. She felt joy, fear, sadness, and hope all at once. She had never realized music could hold so many emotions, or that she could express them so freely. For a few minutes, the world outside disappeared. Only the piano, the hall, and her own heart existed. When she finally stopped, the musician stepped forward carefully. "You have a gift," they said softly. "Do you understand how special this is?" The girl looked up, surprised. She had never thought of herself as special. She had only thought of herself as someone who loved music. She nodded slowly, unsure of what else to say. The musician smiled, encouraging her without pushing. "Keep playing. Do not stop. You have something the world needs to hear." The girl felt a mix of pride and fear. She wanted to believe it, but she also feared it. Could she really have this gift? Could she really go further than she had ever imagined? She looked down at the keys, tracing them with her fingers as if asking for permission from the piano itself. The instrument seemed to hum under her touch, answering in a way only she could understand. From that day forward, the girl began to see the world differently. The hall was no longer just a place for cleaning or observing. It was a place where dreams could begin. Each rehearsal, each empty corridor, each quiet moment became an opportunity. She started noticing small details, the way a musician shifted their hand, the subtle changes in rhythm, the pauses between notes. She began to understand that music was not just sound, but timing, patience, and feeling. She learned to watch, listen, and imagine all at once. Her mother noticed the change too. She saw the spark in her daughter's eyes, the new confidence in her movements, the way she hummed tunes quietly while working. She asked questions gently, making sure the girl was not overexerting herself. She did not push or scold, knowing that encouragement mattered more than rules now. She smiled quietly, proud of the girl's determination and the way music was shaping her world. The girl began to imagine what it would be like to play for more people, not just in secret. She did not think about fame or money. She only thought about sharing the joy, the feeling, the honesty of music. Each time she played, she discovered new ways to express herself, new melodies hidden in her mind. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a friend, a guide, a voice for emotions she could not yet name. Meanwhile, the musicians continued to watch from a distance, fascinated by her progress. They discussed ways to help her, quietly considering how to introduce her to formal training, how to nurture her talent without overwhelming her. They understood that true skill could be delicate, and they wanted to protect her love for music as much as develop it. They were patient, knowing that the best things grow slowly with care and attention. Each day, the girl played a little longer, experimented a little more, and learned a little faster. She began to combine ideas she had picked up from watching rehearsals, transforming them into her own melodies. She was discovering the power of originality, of expressing what she felt rather than copying what she heard. Her music became a reflection of herself, a story only she could tell, full of emotion and truth. One quiet evening, after her mother had finished cleaning, the girl stayed behind, drawn once more to the grand piano. She closed her eyes and let her fingers explore, creating sounds that were new even to her. The hall seemed to respond, carrying the music with warmth and depth. For a long time, she did not notice the shadows near the doorway, the silent witnesses who had returned to hear her play. But this time, she played without fear or hesitation, letting every note reveal her heart and soul. By the time she finished, the musicians approached carefully, more confident now in her ability. They spoke softly, praising her creativity and dedication. The girl felt a growing sense of possibility. She had been a quiet observer, a hidden presence in the halls, but now she was being recognized. Her music had spoken for her, and the world was listening. It was a turning point, a moment where something inside her shifted from dreams to reality, from hope to action. She left the hall that evening with a new understanding. Music was no longer a private escape. It was a bridge to the world outside, a way to connect with people who shared her passion, who understood her heart. She held her mother's hand tightly as they walked home, feeling both nervous and excited. She knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but she also knew that the piano, the hall, and her own determination could carry her forward. The girl had discovered the power of her voice, and she was ready to explore it further, one note at a time. The next day, the girl returned to her routine, but the world around her had shifted. Every corridor, every door, every rehearsal room held a new possibility. She could feel it in the air, in the quiet moments between footsteps, in the soft echoes of music bouncing from the walls. The grand piano waited silently, patient and strong, as if it knew she would return. She imagined her fingers on the keys before she even reached the hall, the sound already alive in her mind. Her mother worked as usual, moving swiftly with the rhythm of the building, cleaning and organizing with practiced efficiency. She noticed her daughter's energy, a subtle change in posture, in the way she glanced toward the hall. She asked if she was feeling well, and the girl nodded. She could not yet explain the change, the excitement that filled her chest. Music had become more than practice. It had become hope. That afternoon, she found herself alone in the hall. The building had emptied of rehearsals, the lights casting long shadows across the floor. She moved to the piano with the same caution as before, yet there was a new determination in her steps. Her fingers hovered above the keys, and she let the melody flow naturally. She did not force it. She did not plan. She simply allowed her feelings to guide her hands. The music rose and fell, soft and gentle at first, then strong and confident. It told a story of longing, courage, and unspoken dreams. From the doorway, a familiar figure appeared. One of the musicians from the night she first played quietly stepped inside, careful not to startle her. The girl noticed immediately but did not stop. She had learned that fear only blocked her music, and now her courage carried her forward. The musician watched silently, amazed at how effortlessly she translated emotion into sound. Each note was filled with honesty, each pause deliberate and meaningful. The hall seemed to hold its breath, listening to something extraordinary unfold. When she finally paused, the musician clapped softly, not to interrupt, but to celebrate. The girl looked up, startled at the sound, unsure if she had done something wrong. The musician smiled, encouraging her. "You have something very rare," they said gently. "Talent and heart together. That is not common. Keep playing, keep exploring. We want to help." The girl's heart raced. She wanted to believe these words, but fear lingered. Could she really belong in this world of music? Could someone from the quiet halls, from broken keyboards and long days of watching, truly be recognized? She looked down at the keys, tracing them with her fingers, and felt a strange sense of calm. Maybe the piano understood her better than anyone else. Maybe it knew she was ready. Her mother appeared cautiously, peeking into the hall. She had noticed the presence of the musician and the way her daughter had held herself. She did not step forward immediately, unsure if she should interrupt. But the musician waved her closer, explaining in quiet tones how special the girl's gift was. The mother felt a mix of pride and disbelief. She had always known her daughter was talented, but seeing recognition from someone the girl admired brought tears to her eyes. The musician asked questions gently, wanting to understand the girl's experience. How had she learned to play without lessons? Where did she practice? What inspired her melodies? The girl answered softly, explaining her quiet hours at home, the broken keyboard, the moments she had spent listening and imagining. She did not boast, did not seek praise. She only spoke honestly. The musician listened with genuine interest, amazed at the combination of natural talent and resilience. Over the following weeks, the relationship between the girl, her mother, and the musicians grew carefully. The musicians offered guidance in small steps, showing her new techniques and encouraging exploration without pressure. They brought sheet music, but did not insist on strict adherence. They wanted her to discover her own style, to keep the joy of playing alive. The girl absorbed every lesson, every suggestion, every kind word, as if it were a treasure. At home, her mother noticed a change in her daughter's confidence. She practiced more deliberately, spoke with more certainty, and smiled with a quiet pride. Music had given her a sense of purpose, a direction she had never known before. The broken keyboard at home became a tool for experimentation, a place to try ideas before bringing them to the grand piano in the hall. Each note she played reflected growth, courage, and a deepening understanding of herself. The musicians, too, began to recognize her potential beyond the hall. They discussed possibilities, ways to nurture her talent further, opportunities for formal training, and performances in safe, supportive environments. They understood that pushing too hard could damage her love for music, so they moved carefully, balancing guidance with freedom. The girl responded eagerly, learning quickly, experimenting boldly, and always returning to the essence of why she played: joy, expression, and honesty. One afternoon, the girl played for longer than usual. The hall was empty, the afternoon sunlight streaming through high windows. She closed her eyes and let her imagination guide her hands. The melody carried stories of her life, the struggles, the long waits, the quiet observations, and the love she felt for her mother. The sound seemed to reach beyond the walls, filling the empty seats with invisible warmth. She played until her fingers ached slightly, yet she felt exhilarated, as if she had touched something greater than herself. When she stopped, the musicians entered quietly, smiling with pride. "That was remarkable," one said. "Every time you play, we hear more of your story. You speak through the piano, and it is beautiful." The girl's face flushed with shyness, but a small smile appeared. She began to understand that music could connect people, that her voice mattered, and that her gift had the power to move others. The mother approached, watching the interaction, her heart full. She had worked tirelessly, supported quietly, and now she saw the fruits of patience and love. She hugged her daughter, careful not to interrupt the moment. The girl leaned against her mother briefly, feeling a surge of gratitude and pride. For the first time, she realized that her talent was not just her own. It was part of a journey shared with those who believed in her. The musicians continued to visit, guiding her gently, providing encouragement, and helping her explore new techniques. They offered small challenges, like trying a difficult passage or composing a short piece, but always emphasized creativity over perfection. The girl responded with enthusiasm, learning rapidly, and discovering that mistakes could lead to new ideas. Each session became a lesson not only in music but in resilience, patience, and self-expression. In the evenings at home, the girl would practice on the old keyboard, trying variations and experimenting with dynamics she had learned. Her mother listened quietly, sometimes humming along, proud of the growth she saw. Music had become a shared language between them, a way to communicate feelings and dreams that words could not capture. The bond between mother and daughter strengthened, built on patience, understanding, and love. The story of the girl's talent began to spread quietly through the music building. Musicians spoke in hushed tones about the child who played with such emotion, so young yet so wise in her understanding of music. They shared their admiration for her dedication, creativity, and courage. Everyone who witnessed her play felt that something extraordinary was unfolding, something rare and beautiful. One day, the girl was asked to play in front of a small group of musicians she had not met before. She felt nervous at first, unsure of what to expect. But as she approached the piano, she remembered the encouragement, the lessons, and the moments of joy she had experienced. She closed her eyes and let her fingers guide her, expressing everything she had learned and felt. The music flowed effortlessly, captivating the listeners. They were moved by the depth of feeling, the honesty, and the skill she displayed. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment, then erupted in quiet applause. The girl blushed, looking down at her hands. She realized that her music had the power to touch others, to communicate what she could not say with words. The musicians praised her gently, offering guidance and expressing awe at her natural ability. The experience reinforced her confidence and determination. Her mother watched proudly, feeling a mixture of awe and gratitude. She had always believed in her daughter, but now others did too. The girl's talent was no longer hidden. It was a light that could not be ignored, a gift that demanded recognition. Together, they realized that this journey had only just begun, and that with patience, dedication, and love, the possibilities were endless. The girl continued to practice, explore, and grow. Every day brought new discoveries, new melodies, and new ways to express herself. She learned that music was not only about skill but about heart, courage, and honesty. The hall, the piano, the musicians, and her mother were all part of a world that supported her, believed in her, and nurtured her dreams. Through it all, she remained humble, curious, and passionate. She knew that her journey was just starting, and that every note, every melody, every lesson was a step toward a future she had never imagined. And as she left the hall each day, she carried with her the knowledge that her music could connect, inspire, and change not only her life but the lives of those who listened. The girl could feel that something was about to change. Over the weeks, she had grown more confident, more skilled, and more in love with music than ever before. She had practiced countless hours, explored new melodies, and learned from the musicians who had quietly guided her. Yet, there was still a part of her that wondered if this path could lead anywhere beyond the empty hallways and polished keys. She had dreamed quietly, but now she began to imagine a future where her music mattered to others. One afternoon, the building was busier than usual. A small group of important musicians and teachers had arrived for a special rehearsal. The girl's mother was busy cleaning, and the girl waited quietly, keeping to her usual spot behind the carts. Her heart raced as she thought about the possibility of being noticed again. Would she play if someone asked? Would she be ready? She closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself breathe, letting the familiar excitement build. When the hall became quiet, she moved toward the grand piano, her fingers brushing the keys lightly at first. Then she began to play. The melody was soft and tentative at first, then grew bolder, richer, full of expression. Every note reflected her journey. The hours spent listening, imagining, practicing, and dreaming. The musicians who had been talking outside paused, drawn by the sound. One by one, they entered silently, watching the girl play with awe. The girl was unaware of how many people were watching. She had learned to focus entirely on the music, on the feeling it gave her, and on the story she wanted to tell through sound. Her fingers danced across the keys, creating harmonies she had never tried before, experimenting with rhythms and dynamics she had only imagined. The music seemed to fill the room with warmth, emotion, and possibility. After a while, one of the musicians quietly stepped forward. "Do you know how remarkable you are?" they asked softly. The girl looked up, startled, unsure how to respond. She only nodded, feeling a mix of pride, nervousness, and joy. The musician smiled, encouragingly. "You have a gift, a true gift, and you can go further than you imagine. We want to help you." The girl's mother appeared at the doorway, her heart racing with excitement and disbelief. She had always known her daughter was talented, but hearing recognition from respected musicians filled her with a mixture of pride and relief. She stepped closer, holding her daughter's hand gently. The girl smiled at her mother, feeling the bond between them grow stronger. She realized that this journey was no longer hers alone. It was shared, nurtured by love, support, and belief. The musicians began to offer small opportunities. They suggested lessons with skilled teachers, introductions to music programs, and safe places to perform. Each suggestion was made gently, with care for the girl's feelings and development. They wanted her to grow without pressure, to explore her music freely, and to maintain the joy that had carried her this far. The girl listened carefully, her eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and determination. She felt the possibility of a future she had never imagined, one where her talent could shine and be recognized. Over the following weeks, her days became a balance of school, home, and music. She practiced diligently, but always with joy and curiosity. She experimented with new melodies, improvised pieces, and even tried composing short songs. Her confidence grew with each note, and she began to understand that music was more than sound. It was a way to express feelings, tell stories, and connect with others. Every time she played, she felt more herself. Her mother continued to support her quietly, proud but careful not to overwhelm her. She arranged small practice sessions at home on the old keyboard, encouraged her to explore ideas, and celebrated every success. The mother had always been her guide, her comfort, and her strength. Now, she also became her witness, watching her daughter's talent blossom in ways that brought tears of pride to her eyes. The girl was invited to play for small audiences, carefully chosen so that she would feel comfortable. The first time she performed in front of more than just the musicians she knew, she felt nervous, but also excited. She sat at the piano, her fingers brushing the keys, and let the music flow naturally. The audience listened quietly, captivated by the honesty and beauty of her playing. Each note reflected her journey, her struggles, and her dreams. When she finished, the room erupted in gentle applause. She blushed, looking down at her hands, but she could feel the power of her music connecting with others. The musicians continued to guide her, providing lessons, feedback, and encouragement. They taught her techniques, helped her understand theory, and introduced her to new styles. But above all, they emphasized the importance of maintaining joy in her playing. They reminded her that her heart, her honesty, and her creativity were what made her music extraordinary. The girl absorbed every lesson, every word, and every moment, growing not only as a musician but as a person. At home, the girl shared her experiences with her mother. They discussed music, melodies, and the possibilities that lay ahead. They laughed, dreamed, and sometimes worried, but always together. Music had become a bridge between them, deepening their bond and giving them a shared language that went beyond words. The mother could see the confidence and maturity growing in her daughter, and she knew that their lives were changing in ways they had never imagined. One evening, after a long practice, the girl sat quietly at the grand piano, reflecting on how far she had come. She remembered the first time she had sat down in the empty hall, the nervousness, the excitement, the fear. She remembered the musicians who had quietly entered, amazed by her talent. She remembered her mother, always supportive, always patient, always believing in her. Now she felt a sense of possibility, a sense that anything could happen if she continued to work, explore, and dream. Her fingers moved over the keys instinctively, creating melodies that were uniquely hers. She experimented, improvised, and composed, each note carrying emotion and meaning. The hall seemed to respond to her, carrying the sound with richness and warmth. She understood that music was not just about playing notes correctly, but about expressing oneself fully, honestly, and courageously. Every melody told a story, every chord held a message, and every pause spoke of feeling. The musicians watched from a distance, proud and amazed. They had seen many talented children, but none like her. They knew she had potential that could change the trajectory of her life, and perhaps inspire others as well. They discussed ways to support her, offering opportunities, guidance, and encouragement, always mindful of preserving her love for music and her unique voice. The girl's confidence grew steadily. She began to see herself not only as a child with talent, but as someone capable of sharing her music with the world. She played for audiences, composed small pieces, and experimented with different styles. She listened to the advice of her mentors, but always added her own touch, ensuring that her music remained true to her heart. She discovered that her talent was not just a gift, but a responsibility, a chance to touch others, to inspire, and to express herself fully. Her mother continued to stand by her side, offering love, guidance, and encouragement. She had been the quiet strength behind every practice, every lesson, every performance. She watched with pride as her daughter grew into her talent, knowing that patience, belief, and love had made all the difference. The girl's music had become a shared journey, a bond that brought joy, hope, and possibility to both of their lives. One afternoon, as the girl prepared to leave the hall after a long practice, one of the musicians approached her with a warm smile. "Do you know what you have done?" they asked. The girl shook her head, unsure. "You have shown us all something extraordinary. Your music speaks from the heart, and it has the power to inspire. Keep going, and never stop believing in yourself." The girl felt a deep sense of gratitude and excitement. She understood that this was only the beginning, that her journey had just begun. She had come a long way from quiet hallways, broken keyboards, and hidden practice sessions. Now, she had mentors, opportunities, and a growing confidence in her own abilities. She had discovered the power of her talent, and she was ready to explore it fully. That evening, she returned home with her mother, carrying a quiet sense of accomplishment and hope. She knew that challenges lay ahead, but she also knew that she had the support, love, and determination to face them. Music had opened doors she had never imagined, and she was ready to step through them, one note at a time. The girl's journey continued, full of practice, exploration, and discovery. She learned that music was more than skill. It was heart, courage, honesty, and expression. She understood that her talent had the power to connect, inspire, and change lives, starting with her own. The hall, the piano, the musicians, and her mother had created a world that nurtured her dreams and celebrated her voice. And as she played each day, she remembered the quiet moments when her journey began, the first hesitant notes, the empty hall, and the belief that music could carry her beyond what she had ever imagined. She realized that her story was no longer just about talent. It was about hope, love, and the courage to pursue one's dreams. The piano, her heart, and her determination had become her voice, and the world was ready to listen.